The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Please pray with me. My God, it's amazing what we get to do here today. But Lord, as we think about our day, Lord, they're so filled with things, with events, with tasks. Our schedules are just packed. And Lord, in all these days, as long as they feel, or the things that we do, they can get all washed into one. They just become a blur one day after another as we get so task heavy. And God, it seems only natural as it happens for us to be trying to maximize our schedules, how we manage our time, how we manage ourselves. And Lord, without knowing it, our worlds that were once big slowly become small as we get so self-focused just because of the demands that are placed on us. But Lord, it's at those times that you lend us your heart. Or when our world becomes so small and focused on just us and all that's demanded of us and everything that we have to do, or do you lend us your heart to see others? Or do your heart that Lord reaches out and sees people as valuable, people who you've made in your image, no matter what they look like, no matter how they dress, or not even what their opinions are, you love them. You see their hearts, what makes them laugh, what brings them fear, or you care for them. Their future is in your hands. And so in this moment when we get so easily caught up in everything that is demanded of us and what we have to do, and our world shrinks to just being about us, Lord, would you lend us our heart to see the people the way that you see them, or that they matter in your sight. And in doing so, Lord, you make our world that was once small much, much bigger, filled with joy and excitement. So Lord, we just ask that of you. Would you lend us your heart? We ask this in your name, in the name of your Son. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Pastor Novotny from Eagle Brook Church in Maplebrook, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members, please join me in welcoming a former member to the floor of the Minnesota House of Representatives today, former Speaker Bob Vanasek. Former Speaker Vanasek served from 1973 to 1992 and was first elected at the age of 23. The clerk will take the roll. Will the chief clerk please call the names of the members voting remotely?
Carroll.
There you go. Go ahead, Ned.
Carroll, present.
Carroll, present. Hussein. Hussein, present.
The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 93rd Session, 2024, 91st day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Wednesday, March 13th, 2024.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business is on your desk and online. If there's no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House files.
Second reading, House File number 2421.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File number 3389.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 3798.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 3871.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 4175.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 4273.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 4354.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 4457.
Second reading.
And second reading, House File number 4538.
Second reading. Introduction of House files. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction of first reading of House Files 4925 through 4976.
First reading, House files 4925 through 4976. Messages from the Senate.
A message from the Senate, Madam Speaker. I hereby announce the Senate has concurred in and adopted the report of the Conference Committee on House File number 3489, an act relating to education providing for public safety. The Senate has repassed said bill in accordance with the recommendation report of the Conference Committee. Message is signed Thomas S. Boddern, Secretary of the Senate.
Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Along from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Monday, March 18, 2024, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bills. House File numbers 3769 and 8613. Calendar
for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 4518. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 4518, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to education finance, making forecast adjustments.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Youakim, to explain the bill.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker and members. Before us today is House File 4518. This is the forecast adjustment bill for the K-12 portion of the budget. The bill adjusts fiscal year 2024 appropriations to match the February 2024 forecast data to the best estimates of the state aid required for each K-12 program and appropriation. Generally, a change in the estimated pupil counts or a change in a program participation is the most likely cause of a forecast adjustment. The changes in appropriations are real, and the changes must be enacted in law for the Minnesota Department of Education to have the statutory authority to pay our schools what they're due. The adjustments have no fiscal impact when measured against the K-12 budget because the changes are built into the forecasted estimate of the budget base. So forecast adjustments are made every year in almost every budget area that has a forecasted appropriation or program. Members, I would ask for your support.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 4518.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. The member from Morrison, Representative Kresha.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members, and thank you, Chair Youakim, for bringing this bill forward. It's a necessary bill. We do this
every period when we have to look at the budget. Members, this is an important bill to do. Yes, we need to make sure we have this appropriation. There's an open appropriation by statute where the schools are going to get their money to cover their expenses. However, when we look at the liabilities of special ed and lunches, for example, those are not part of that open appropriation. So if we don't do this, those schools will then have to draw money from the general fund and they will have to pay for those. And we don't want that to happen. So we need to pass this bill. We've done it many, many years, adjusting for the pupil counts. But the interesting thing about this is when we talk about open appropriations, where we basically tell MMB, hey, take care of this, we have another open appropriation, and that is the big state office building project. We have an open appropriation there. We're basically allowing the governor and the majority party to say, spend whatever you need to do on this. And the problem that I see is we haven't put that in places of special ed and other ones. So in other words, on a philosophical level, the majority party and the governor have said, do whatever you need on that big hole in the ground, fund it. The investment bankers that are going to make approximately $35 million a year for 19 years on that, go ahead with that. Just do it. But yet we have to come back here and vote on this. And so, members, I recommend a yes vote on this. Let's do this so that our schools are not drawing from their general fund. In fact, let's do this so we protect this money so that it does not become part of the open appropriation for the state office building project. And with that, I would urge a green vote.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Speaker. And members, just to note that Section H of the bill on pages 10 and 11 relating to early childhood education are in the jurisdiction of the Children and Families Committee, and just reassuring those of you who may have been worried about this, I'm sure quite a few, that did in fact pass through the Children and Families Committee, and I'm very happy to support the bill as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Further discussion to the bill? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Will the clerk please call the names of the members who are voting remotely?
Carroll.
Okay, here you go.
Carroll, yes.
Carroll votes aye. Hussein.
Hussein, aye.
Hussein votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 125 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 4483. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 4483, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to legislative enactments making miscellaneous technical corrections to laws and statutes, the first engrossment.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Becker-Finn, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Speaker. Yes, this is the annual reviser's technical bill, bipartisan authors, and I can speak to my motives and was going to pad my stats with some more reviser technical bills. Please support it.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 4483.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Members, please vote. Will the clerk please call the names of the members voting remotely?
Carroll.
Carroll, yes.
Carroll votes aye. Hussein.
Hussein, aye.
Hussein votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 126 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Motions and resolutions. There's copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there is no objection, we will take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail.
Senator Murrah moves that House File Number 2821 be recalled from the Committee on State Government, Local Finance and Policy and be re-referred to the Committee on Economic Development, Finance and Policy.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Senator Murrah, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, this bill was referred to state and local government, and I would like it heard in economic development, finance, and policy. It's a bill relating to establishing a process for requesting a racial equity impact note for legislation that relates and falls under deeds purview. So it should be heard in that committee. I've talked to both chairs, and they're okay with this change.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails.
Myers moves that House File Number 4288 be recalled from the Committee on Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law and be re-referred to the Committee on Agricultural, Finance, and Policy.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Myers, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That is my motion. This is a bill related to notice requirements for stray animals, and I've spoken to both chairs of Agriculture and Judiciary, and they are both in agreement.
Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails.
Katiza Watuin moves that House File Number 4443 be recalled from the Committee on Health, Finance, and Policy and be re-referred to the Committee on Children and Families, Finance, and Policy.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Katiza Watuin, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That is my motion. House File 4443 is a proposal having to do with early childhood mental health grants, and after discussion with both chairs, we think it would make more sense to be heard first in Children and Families, Finance, and Policy. Thank you.
Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails.
Bierman moves that House File Number 4587 be recalled from the Committee on Transportation, Finance, and Policy and be re-referred to the Committee on Commerce, Finance, and Policy.
The member from Dakota, Representative Bierman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That is my motion. This is a bill relating to auto insurance and needs to be in Commerce, and I have the approval of both chairs. Thank you.
Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails.
Cleavorn moves that House File number 4854 be recalled from the Committee on State and Local Government Finance and Policy and be re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is an Office of Administrative Hearings bill. There are many elements of this bill that need to be heard in judiciary. We would like for it to go to judiciary first and then be referred to state and local government.
Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails.
Scott moves that the rules of the House be so far suspended so that House File number 548 be recalled from the Committee on Public Safety, Finance, and Policy, be given its second and third readings, and be placed upon its final passage.
The member from Anoka, Representative Scott, to your motion.
Madam Chair, or Madam Speaker, that is my motion, House File 548. If you haven't read it, it talks about ineligible persons transfer a firearm to ineligible persons. I'd ask for a roll call, and then, Madam Chair, I would love to explain further.
Representative Scott requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Scott.
Speaker Hortman and members, in 2019, I introduced House File 2423, this same bill. In 2021, House File 346, really early bill introduction numbers if you notice there. And this year, House File 548, same bill. Here we are, 5 years after the initial introduction of this bill, to hold people accountable who are illegally transferring firearms to known felons. The Star Tribune article today should have hopefully given everybody in this body pause, because we found out, and we had these suspicions, but the person that the person that shot our 3 first responders in Burnsville was not supposed to have firearms. In fact, he pleaded with the courts a couple years before this incident, asking that those rights be given back to him, and he was denied. But instead, someone went out and purchased 5 firearms and gave them to him. There are text messages showing the conversation between them as to what firearms he wanted, and she went out and purchased them for him. And the really sad part about all this is that it was all done in the last year. In fact, the 2 firearms used on February 18th were purchased on January 5th and January 25th, respectively. Members, we had the opportunity last year, you took my amendment to add this bill to the public safety omnibus. It hit the cutting room floor. So here we are, a year later, 3 dead first responders, and multiple other victims, I might add. I've been saving articles of other folks that have been killed at the hands of someone that obtained a firearm illegally that should not have had a firearm, a felon in possession. Our 3 first responders might very well, as other victims as well, might very well be alive today had this bill passed 5 years ago. It's time to quit with the excuses, members. We've got to do the right thing on these gun laws and stop punishing law-abiding people and get at the real criminals, the real people that are causing death and serious injury. Members, I urge your support to suspend the rules. We can take this up right now. Let's pass it, and let's be done with it. Let's get this on the books. I ask for your support.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Moeller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for the opportunity to say that we should vote no on suspending the rules because, as you all know, we are not through the committee process yet. We still have the policy deadline coming up. There are still bills that we are considering putting on, and Representative Scott probably saw that we requested a fiscal note on this bill, and we just got that back to verify that there is no cost. But we are hearing a number of gun bills in our committee. I'll note that the article that you mentioned also talked about how the straw purchase or purchase weapons of war, AR-15s. There are many things that we need to do when it comes to guns. We've heard a safe storage bill. We've heard reporting lost and stolen firearms. We've heard about local control over other guns. Today in committee, we created a task force specifically to look at the issue of domestic violence and abusers who have guns and shouldn't, and how we can make sure that those guns get out of their hands. I am willing to consider any and all proposals, and we're still doing that. We're coming up to deadline, and we will be announcing the rest of our schedule soon, so we don't need to suspend the rules now. Thank you.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We hear and often hear from your side of the aisle, we have to do something about guns. Here is your opportunity. We just heard from the chair that there is zero fiscal cost to this. We heard last year that this was put into the bill, so you all have already voted for this. You have. And I would like to remind you of the studies that have been done. North of 89% of all guns used in the commission of a crime are obtained illegally, and certainly a subset of those are straw purchases. And a straw purchase, by definition, is when a person knowingly purchases a gun for a known prohibited person. That's the example that Representative Scott just gave. We can agree and have agreed, your side has agreed, that this is a good piece of legislation since it was in the bill. The chair has already put it into her bill. So why do we have to bring it back to committee when it was already in your bill in the omnibus? You know, members, it is for our side, it is very difficult to understand how you can give something a thumbs up by assigning your vote to it and then take it out of the bill. But even more so, it is confusing to me who, yes, I am a very pro-Second Amendment legislator. You've heard me talk about the gas and sip. The gas and sip is where straw purchases get consummated to the prohibited person. So they will go behind unnamed gas station, because I don't ever want to impugn our existing gas stations, and a bag of cash will be given for illegal guns. Or, as in the case that Representative Scott just shared with you, a family member or a romantic interest will purchase components or a gun and knowingly give it to a prohibited person. You know, I remember when I served on the Public Safety Committee, the former Hennepin County Attorney, Mike Freeman, told us, and I don't often have my jaw fall open, well, I do when I read bills on introduction, but in committee, my jaw fell on the floor when then Attorney Freeman said, it's hard to enforce these gun crimes and the penalties aren't big enough, so we just don't even prosecute them. And I will tell you that all the Republican members that were in that committee, we looked at each other in shock because we just heard the Hennepin County Attorney say, yeah, I'm just not that interested in prosecuting gun crimes. We should put this on the rolls. We should make this law so that possibly the current Hennepin County Attorney and all other 86 county attorneys will have another tool in their tool chest to say, in this particular case, we now know what happened. We now know the path of acquisition for the guns that killed these 3 first responders, and now we're going to hold you accountable. So in the truest sense of the word, Representative Scott, in the truest sense of the word, this is an urgency. This is an urgency by definition. And I would encourage you members, you've voted for it before because you all voted for the public safety bill, except our new member on your side. You've all voted for this. Bring this up, do it now, and give the county attorneys and other prosecutors the ability to hold straw purchasers accountable. That way, you don't have to, with a broad brush and a wide swath, go after law-abiding gun owners. You have the chance right now to do the right thing and hold straw purchasers accountable by voting green on Representative Scott's urgency. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Sherburne, Representative Novotny.
Madam Speaker, after the tragedy that happened in Burnsville, I was given a chance to do a radio interview. I was requested to do it. It wasn't my idea. For those of you that know me, I've never sought any kind of attention like that. But for the first time in my life, I gave an interview that was actually organized. And I had talking points. And my talking points were really simple. And I'm saying this because in the end, I'll explain. My 3 talking points were education. We have to educate the public for the family members and friends that are doing these purchases for someone that's prohibited and shouldn't have these weapons. Don't let them talk you into doing this because it's wrong and there's penalties for it. And the second part was information. We should be tracking this. I did a data request to the Hennepin County Attorney's Office after we had the discussion that Representative Nash was talking about. And lo and behold, if you look at the tracking, almost every case in Hennepin County was technically charged out. How many of them were followed up with after the long-form complaint was done was very little. And the third part that I had was prosecution. We have to follow through with the long-form complaints. The prosecution ties into the education. When people know that they're going to be held accountable, maybe they won't do that straw purchase. My preference would be that we wouldn't be prosecuting for the straw purchase after a tragedy. My preference would be that we would prosecute the people that aren't following the laws and creating these situations to start with as a discouragement to the next person. They don't want to be the one that's going to be dragged into court. That would be my preference. The prevention of the next incident that we had. And I bring this up because I had my 3 points, and I gave them, and I circled the wagon at the end, and I summated them. It's the first time I've ever listened and done what they did, or what they teach you in the interviews classes. I redid my points. I was so proud of myself. I didn't ramble for 20 minutes in the middle. And it comes out in the paper. One line, education and information. Didn't even bother to include prosecution. It's 3 sides that we have to have if we're going to make a difference. Members, vote green.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of Representative Scott's motion to suspend the rules and take this up right away. Members, this is such an urgency. We have been watching this for years. This is my 6th year in the legislature. When I first came to the legislature, I didn't know much about this issue, and there was a shooting that I heard about and looked into where 14 people were shot in St. Paul, and it was tied to a straw purchaser. So I talked to my police chief. I tried to figure out more what we could do to stop this gun violence, and I know all of you care about stopping gun violence. And he set me up with a meeting with the ATF and the FBI. And so we went through what federal statute does, what state statute does, and I said, what can we do? What is the #1 thing we can do? And the ATF told me, make straw purchasers a felony in state law. That was really what they asked for. And so I was already a co-author on the Scott bill, and I've continued to support it. And last year, we did it in this body. We voted for making that happen, and then it came out in the conference committee. Members, how many more times are we going to have this conversation and go through this and watch the news? You've already voted for it. Let's get this done. there was a study, I didn't have time to print it out and share it on the floor, but just in 2021, there were 6 cases of straw purchasers involving multiple weapons purchases. One person purchased 47 guns. Another person, 118. Members, this is not, it sometimes is the one-off for a girlfriend, but it's also a racket. And we need to increase the penalties on this. We all care about ending gun violence. We all care about safer communities. So let's work together to pass this today so that we've increased the penalties and make our communities safer. It would materially make a difference. Please vote green.
The member from Isanti, Representative Johnson.
Madam Speaker, members, Representative Scott, thank you for bringing this forward. This is an important issue. We have an issue where we have differences of opinions how we want to stop gun violence. One way is to ban all firearms, but that doesn't keep those who want to do destructive things from obtaining them. The best way to do that is to hold these people who are providing firearms for those not allowed by our current law to possess them accountable. I was floored when then County Attorney Freeman said, "Make it worth my time." Apparently for him, the lives of citizens of Hennepin County aren't worth his time to prosecute those at that time for straw purchases. Last year, we put this in the Public Safety Omnibus Bill. Now is the time to send it as standalone over to the Senate and have them decide what they want to do. We can stand up for the law-abiding citizens of this state or not. It's your choice. Or you can go after the law-abiding citizens of this state. It's one or the other. I want to stand up for the law-abiding citizens and hold those who commit crimes accountable to the full extent of the law, where county attorneys will actually prosecute for straw purchases. Now is the time to do it. Vote yes on the Scott amendment.
Discussion. The member from Freeborn, Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to add to this. You know, as a teacher, I always had consequences for bad behavior in my classroom. Tried to create incentives for my students to follow our rules and get along and so on, but there were always those consequences when they broke a rule significantly. And I think about in our own society, when somebody abuses our road laws and speeds, the speeder and the person driving the vehicle and speeds gets the penalty. They pay the ticket. The rest of us don't pay tickets and pay penalties and fines for that. When somebody drinks and drives, the penalties and restrictions go on the person who drinks and drives, not the rest of us. Or how about somebody who goes after a bank and robs a bank? The bank account holders don't get penalized for that or restrictions. The bank robber is the one who is held accountable. And this is the same way with people who commit crimes with guns. We need to have accountability for those who are criminals who commit crimes with guns. Straw purchases are perfect. Thank you, Representative, and Peggy, and the same Peggy as me, we're the Peggy team. But thank you, Representative Scott, for this bill. We should be penalizing greatly any crime that's committed with a gun. That's how you limit and reduce the amounts in crimes. So I'd say go after criminals. It seems like more and more we're letting criminals off. We're giving them lighter sentences, and we're going after law-abiding gun owners instead. So I very much support this. Thank you.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, there absolutely is an urgency to address gun violence, and that's exactly why we finally advanced last session, after years of opposition, criminal background checks red flag laws to do more to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. But members, this particular proposal, appreciate bringing it forward. We had the vote on the floor last year, had not had a committee hearing about this proposal. This proposal, there's a reason that it has a zero fiscal note, which it says that it's really not expected to be used even if this passes. And why would that possibly be? Well, because this law would require that the person know that the person they're buying guns for is actually ineligible. And I can tell you, members, as a prosecutor, it's very rare that that kicks in. Now, when it does, as it certainly did in the case of the Burnsville shooting, then in fact the straw purchaser is charged, and that's exactly what happened. The person who purchased that AR-15 has in fact been charged in federal court and is going to be held liable. They're going to be held accountable. But the fiscal note came back on this proposal and has found that there's no cost because, in fact, it would extremely rarely be used because it is very rare that, in fact, you can prove the person knows. I heard a number of comments talking about how there's a county attorney a number of years ago who said, oh my goodness, yeah, we don't charge this. The reason is because it's not a felony. The county attorneys, in fact, cannot charge. That particular county attorney in Hennepin was not able to charge this crime. It was a gross misdemeanor. It is a gross misdemeanor. Now, should it possibly be changed? Perhaps. We're going to have a committee process, work our way through. It has not had a committee hearing. But the idea that there is an urgency about this proposal, that in fact through the fiscal note is found, in fact, that it could not be used, that to my mind does not make any sense. Let the process play out. Let it work its way through. Unfortunately, as Chair Moeller referenced, there was fortunately, there was a discussion today in the Public Safety Committee about a proposal to have a look at how we can ensure that firearms are taken out of the hands of domestic abusers, what we can do on that. And sadly, the minority on the committee offered an amendment to keep that but remove any reference to firearms and to not pursue that. I'd ask folks to take a look at that committee hearing. I don't believe that the moving forward on this is the right way to go, is not the right thing to do in the committee today. I'm glad we voted that amendment down. And members, we should certainly vote this down as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Stearns, the member from Sherburne, Representative Novotny.
To quote President Reagan, there you go again. Finish the rest of what I said in committee, Representative Pinto. What I said was, we agree, we want to add to it, and because this is important, we think we should have Bill 699 brought to the floor and have a hearing. We don't need a task force that will put things off for a year and kick the can down the road. I said that we wanted to move this forward now. We've got a bill ready to go that Representative Scott put up last year and cannot get a hearing that would accomplish everything that you want in your task force. We didn't take away anything from what your task force wanted to do. We wanted to add to it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is pretty simple. And Representative Pinto, thank you for making the case for why this is important. It's not a felony right now, so county attorneys can't prosecute it. That's what this bill fixes. It makes it a felony, so county attorneys both can prosecute it and will prosecute it. And don't talk to me about the process. The process was we as a House voted this into the omnibus bill last year, and the all DFL conference committee dropped it with no good explanation for why. This bill has been around, as Representative Scott pointed out, year after year after year. And the problem is that the majority's priority in dealing with gun crimes is to punish the objects or the victims of gun crimes and not to go after gun runners. This bill says the priority is if you are running guns, if you are circumventing the background check laws, if you are circumventing the felon in possession laws, if you are running guns, that is a crime that we will prosecute and punish at a state level, that our state prosecutors can punish, instead of having to wait around for Andy Lugar to clean up their mess. We need to fix this. We should have fixed this last year. We should have fixed it in 2019, Representative Scott. We should have fixed it a long time ago. But this is real simple. If you learned anything from what happened in Burnsville, make straw purchasing a felony so that our state prosecutors can prevent the next Burnsville. Vote yes.
The member from Stearns, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. And Representative Scott, thank you for your tenacity in continuing to bring this forward. This is very important. Members, we could have had this taken care of in 2019, and we didn't. But I'm grateful that we did pass it off this House floor just last year. Unfortunately, as you have heard from my colleagues, it was stripped out in conference committee, and that was wrong. But this is the important thing that we can do today. And I appreciate Representative Pinto bringing forward the fact that it is rarely used. That's why the county attorney had mentioned not being able to prosecute that and making that exact point. Let's raise it to a level of felony. Let's not wait any longer. We are already 6 years behind the process, looking back at 2019. We are 6 years late on this, and citizens and law enforcement have paid the price because of the delay in this chamber not increasing the penalty for straw purchases. We know that protecting citizens and the men and women that protect our communities and keep us safe every day is a priority. And this is the opportunity that you have in this chamber to vote green, declare the urgency, let's move this bill on, and the Senate can choose what they want to do with it. And I want to make one thing clear. This is not about infringing the rights of law-abiding citizens. This legislation solely targets criminal activity and those who knowingly circumvent the laws that exist, and it makes our communities less safe. This does not have to take long on this House floor to do the right thing. Please vote green. We can declare the urgency. Hear the bill. You've already heard testimony in favor of it. It would not have to be repeated. And then you can choose when it comes to the vote on the actual bill, whether or not you want to vote for it again and support the right thing here. Let's increase the penalty on straw purchases, something that criminals do when they know they are doing the wrong thing. And Representative Pinto, if it is rare, then let's stop it from happening. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Madam Speaker, and thank you. Members, when I started here several years ago, there were several issues that I worked with members on the other side of the aisle, and we were able to accomplish great things. This bill should be something that is a bipartisan thing. It should have passed many years ago. And I dare say that had it been the idea of one of your members, that it would have been law by now. And that's really sad because a lot of people have died in the meantime because this law wasn't raised to the level of a felony and these people weren't held accountable. Maybe it would be better if somebody else, Representative Berg or somebody else, authored the bill. Maybe it would pass. I don't know. It's so simple. It's so simple. You voted for it last year. It's not rocket science. But if you really, really want to do something about gun crime, then you'll pass this law. When I had this bill drafted in 2019, I also had the other bill drafted about a follow-up hearing, an emergency follow-up hearing after these folks that were domestic violence committers had been told by a judge that they had to surrender their firearms. And then not long after that, a woman was killed in southern Minnesota where her abuser was told he couldn't have his firearms, but there was nobody following up to make sure that it happened. And so the other bill that was talked about today requires an emergency follow-up hearing to make sure that those firearms are turned over. Members, this is common sense stuff. This is stuff we should all agree on. Let's not wait for another tragedy. Please vote green.
The clerk will take the roll on the motion to suspend the rules. Will the clerk please call the names of the members who are voting remotely?
Carol.
Carol, aye.
Carol votes aye. Hussein.
Hussein, no.
Hussein votes no.
Wait, Carol wants to change his vote.
Carol.
One more time.
Carol, no.
Carol changes from aye to no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 60 ayes and 66 nays, the motion does not prevail. There's a motion at the desk.
Novotny moves that the rules of the House be so far suspended so that House File number 4837 be recalled from the Committee on Taxes, be given its second and third readings, and be placed upon its final passage.
The member from Sherburne, Representative Novotny.
That is my motion, Madam Chair. I ask for it to have a second reading and be brought to the floor with an urgency. And I ask for a roll call.
Representative Novotny requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Novotny.
Madam Chair, last year's tax omnibus bill included $300 million in public safety aid to local communities for fire and police equipment. For some reason, the purchase of armored or tactical vehicles and the cost of improving public safety stations for security reasons was excluded from the uses that funds could go to. Unfortunately, in the early morning hours of Sunday, February 18th, we all saw while law enforcement agencies need these armored tactical vehicles. The call to dispatch went as follows. Shots fired, heavy gunfire from the front, 2 down, officer down. We're getting rifle fire from the house. Anybody got eyes on? He's firing more shots. Officers to the side, fall back. Anyone inside, fall back. And I need 2 additional ambulances. And then he pled, we need more armor. Just 2 weeks ago in Ramsey County, a Ramsey County deputy was following a vehicle, pursuing a vehicle. Two rounds struck the squad. 1 round went through the window and shrapnel struck the deputy's vest. Just this last weekend, Oakdale police responding to a domestic call, and a man fired at the officers who had to take cover behind their squads and wait until an armored vehicle could be brought to the scene and extract them. This is unconfirmed, but I'm told it was approximately 90 minutes that they were pinned down behind their squad. This isn't the movies. This isn't combat in some far-off place. This is here in your communities. These are real, very recent events that demonstrate law enforcement need for these items. Since 2019, assaults on law enforcement officers in Minnesota has over doubled. Recently, Ramsey County Sheriff Bob Fletcher summed it up better than I ever could. And he said, quote, "Can you care about us before we are dead? Everyone rushes to make positive statements when someone is killed. But before that, support is waning." House File 4837 makes armored or tactical vehicles and the cost of improving police stations eligible for uses in the public safety aid. This bill would cost the state nothing. It is just permission to spend already allocated funds in ways that were previously restricted. Members, this is your chance to show you care about your public safety personnel before they are dead. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Gomez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Novotny. You know, our communities have been through a lot, especially our Burnsville colleagues and the Minnesotans in Burnsville, and I know that when such an awful thing happens, it has like reverberating effects throughout communities, throughout those particular families and those geographic areas, and also, you know, for people here with us today and across the state who are public safety officers, who put themselves on the line to help people, who put themselves in harm's way during really, really hard moments. And so, you know, I join you in just my compassion to those who are impacted by this directly, and to all those communities who have been impacted by terrible violence throughout our state. You know, a lot of these incidents that you referenced, and a lot of, you know, the incidents of mass violence that have been, I think, you know, the most chilling and the most terrifying and the most heartbreaking, you know, those acts have been carried out with weapons of war, weapons of destruction, high-capacity rifles, you know, using bump stocks, basically making fully automatic guns. I mean, the carnage that can be visited on a crowd of people, you know, with those instruments, those tools, those weapons is just, it's unimaginable, and it's really awful. So the public safety aid that we included in the 2023 tax bill was a priority of the governor. It was a priority of many members in this body, I think on both sides of the aisle. And you know, a lot of effort went into it, a lot of thought went into it, and some negotiation went into it. And so, you know, this was part of that negotiated deal. And I'll tell you, please, if you haven't, ask your local law enforcement agencies about the public safety aid that was in the DFL tax bill last year. Ask them about it. Because I've heard from a lot of your law enforcement agencies on this, actually, because Chair Moeller, you know, is really interested in learning more, was interested in learning more about what people were using these funds for, that were going to communities, you know, to law enforcement agencies, you know, to improve public safety in their communities. And so we learned a lot of things about it. People are using it for personnel. They're using it for, like, you know, for to hire new classes of cadets sometimes, to do a one-time bonus, you know, to help get programs off the ground. They're using it for emergency response. They're using it for violence intervention. They're using it for mental health treatment for officers. You know, because that's the other thing about, you know, the trauma of a really terrible, you know, mass violent incident like that, is that like, that really can get to people, you know, and people out there, you know, responding to these tragedies are human beings, and And so, we have to look out for them, not just on the front end, but, after something like this happens, and make sure that they have the support that they need. And I think Representative Stevenson supported an initiative called the Neck Up Checkup, right? That was its name. And so some law enforcement agencies across our state are using it for that. I read about radios, I read about fire engines, I read about a lot of things, a lot of needs in the communities across the state. One thing I didn't read was, or ever hear from anybody, was we are having trouble spending this money. You know what we need? We need to spend it on a tank. Like, we don't want to spend it on literally any other thing, right? The neck up, checkup, mental health support for officers, radios, fire trucks, bonuses, retention bonuses, hiring bonuses. Like, there was nobody who had trouble spending this money. There was nobody who said, man, not being able to spend this on these two very narrow things is really interrupting us delivering public safety to our communities. Absolutely not. Because when you go and talk to them, what they'll say is thank you. They'll say thank you. Thank you to the DFL for delivering, this general use money for law enforcement. And, no amount of armored personnel carriers, no tank or Bradley, can stop terrible incidents of violence from happening in communities. You can't put it wasn't just police, you can't put every paramedic or EMT in a tank. We can't do that. We can't armored personnel carrier our way out of, the epidemics of violence that we see across our communities and across our state. So I would urge a red vote on this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The member from Mauer, Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. Thank you, Representative Novotny, for bringing this urgency forward. I just wanted to take one brief moment to have just a very small comment, maybe. We heard that these incidences were done with weapons of war. These were done by criminals. Criminals that should have been behind bars. Criminals that should have not been on our streets. I am tired of hearing so many bills and so many provisions that tell me that I need to continue to look at the weapon that we're using instead of the criminals that are using it. It is imperative that we allow our communities to use this money for what they need it. And we've already heard from Representative Novotny that they need it for this. How dare we decide what they get to spend their money on or not? How dare we? Let's actually do our jobs and decide that we give them the money that they get to use for what they need, and maybe hold people accountable for crimes.
The member from Olmsted, Representative McQuam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I did grad school and worked in the Dallas area for a while, so I monitor some of that. A few years ago, they had a sniper. There was a public event. They had a sniper. There were law enforcement officers using their bodies to shield those that were shot. They also got shot and injured. The delay to get the injured people out to save their lives was the delay for a vehicle that could come in and block the shots so they could load people into the vehicle and get them to safety. My wife, for many, many years, worked as a first responder. And there were rare occasions of where she could not go in to provide medical aid and help people because there was a risk, a danger, and they had to wait until law enforcement took care of it. Now, those are different situations, different locations. I trust the local law enforcement that have been putting their lives on the line to protect people, to know what they might need. And I have seen examples where lives were saved because they had a tactical vehicle. I haven't seen a tank driven by a law enforcement. I've seen tactical vehicles that are bulletproof that can come in, be in between the shooters and the people that have been shot, open up, and they can get them to safety. If a sheriff or police chief feels that they need that available, then I trust their determination. And I have no doubt that it can be used for public safety and for saving lives. So I don't know why we don't allow the local people to make the decision and handcuff them because of concern that we'll have tanks and some bizarre stuff going on. I trust those people with the safety of my communities, and I trust them with the decision, and we need to allow them to be able to make the right decision for their community. Thank you.
The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I try to keep everything logical and not super emotional. I might have a hard time here. I have law enforcement in my family, including my father-in-law is a law enforcement officer. But I was listening very carefully to Chair Gomez, I appreciate the kind words. I'm sure law enforcement and everyone who is affected by the Burnsville situation appreciates the empathy. But what I was really listening for was a reason to vote no. Any reason to vote no. I heard a lot of words, and there was really only one word that I think maybe was the reason, and the word I heard was negotiated. That we had limits that were negotiated. So to the people of Minnesota, I want to translate that for you. What that means is, last year, when the trifecta was deciding how to spend this money, there were some people in the majority party who don't want police officers to have armor. And the trifecta negotiated with them to put in place these limits. And to all of you who went along with that, shame on you. Shame on you if you went along with that. But this is your chance to fix it. Vote yes.
Further discussion on the motion. Representative Novotny.
Madam Speaker, I heard the tax chair mention a couple things that I feel can't go unanswered. She said, we're talking about two narrow things that we want to spend money on. Yes, they are two narrow things, but they are very important things. The tax chair mentioned that there's money in there for counseling and mental health services for first responders. You know what's a lot less stressful for a first responder? Fixing up your armored vehicle after it's taken a round, as opposed to cleaning up a squad car that's covered in blood, or going to a funeral. I was the tactical commander for our team when I was working when we had the chance to get an armored vehicle from the government. It wasn't a tank. It wasn't a Bradley. It was sitting on the same chassis and engine that our plows used. So I was able to get parts from our highway department when I needed it to get work done. It's not an instrument of war. It had a Cat engine and a Cat transmission. And what it did is it gave us the ability to slow things down when we've got a situation when we're dealing with a barricaded suspect. It gave us the ability to sit there and when it's 20 below and the bad guy is in a house and you're hiding behind a tree, freezing, and you have 15 minutes most before you can have to reposition, as opposed to driving right up to his front window and waving at him while you're eating McDonald's. I can show you the picture on my phone. It slows things down. If it slows things down, then eventually we can get them to come out. So nobody is hurt. I mentioned the part, and we put in the language about making safety changes. And I won't point out the member from the other side that I spoke to because I didn't get permission to do that. But we had a conversation. She was doing a ride-along with her department, and she talked about how they've got these great reflective windows. So during the day, the mirror keeps them from being seen inside. But she was riding at night. And at night, she couldn't see outside, and how exposed she felt, and thought that that was a huge safety improvement that could be done. And that's why I threw that into the bill, and I was working on it with Representative Whitty, and we were putting this together. That's an important safety change that this could be made for. Maybe I missed the mark. Maybe I misread this room. I thought I'd be able to get 90 votes. I remember the faces that I saw at the candlelight vigil the night of the 18th. The faces that I saw at the funeral. I thought that we'd have support and show law enforcement and public safety that we support them. This is their chance to do it. Vote green.
The member from Stearns, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. Members, we have the opportunity once again to vote green on declaring this urgency. And I just want to point out a couple of things. By the limitations that were put on police departments, cities, our counties, and not allowing them to use the public safety dollars in the ways that they know would best serve their area, that local control, we are doing them a disservice. I was at a township meeting earlier this week, and there were discussions about the dollars that were received from the audience as they were listening, and I said, but the things you've brought forward, it wouldn't be able to be used for those. Now, the person I was talking to was not political in any way and said, why would the majority have chosen to limit what these dollars, these helpful public safety dollars, why would they limit what they can be used for when we know what our community needs the best? I couldn't answer that other than they did. Well, members, in this chamber now we have that opportunity to slightly change the limitations that were put on the dollars that were allocated last year. We don't want to prevent our local communities from doing what they need to do, but in this case we have. We heard the word tank or Bradley. We're talking about armored vehicles. Representative Novotny clearly brought forward what this is and what this isn't. So I don't want anyone, as you choose to make your vote to declare the urgency, I don't want any misunderstanding in this place. So you know exactly the vote that you are going to be taking. Now we can, unfortunately, in this body, we have attended funerals and vigils for heroes across our state. And we don't want that to happen anymore. We have a choice in this body right now by pushing green instead of just crying at a funeral. Pushing green right now on this urgency allows us And the quote that you heard earlier from the officer Fletcher, we have that opportunity to push green and care about those before they are dead. Members, I encourage a green vote on this urgency. Let's take up the bill and have a full discussion on it.
The clerk will take the roll on the motion. Will the clerk please call the names of the members who are voting remotely?
Carol.
Carol, no.
Carol votes no. Hussein.
Hussein, no.
Hussein votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 60 ayes and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail. Announcements. Members, we were briefly joined by two former members. I think they've both departed the chamber, but I think we had with us former Representative Lori Halverson from Egan, who served from 2013 to 2020, and former Representative Roz Peterson, who served from 2015 to 2018 from Lakeville. Announcements. Oh, Lori's still here. The member from Clay, Representative Keeler, an announcement.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to acknowledge that we had Red Lake Nation leaders here, Red Lake Nation youth joining us today, but we have a dinner tonight at the Intercontinental at 6 p.m. that I hope all of you can join us for. Thank you.
Further announcements. The member from Washington, Representative Hemmingson Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, today is a very important day for scientists, mathematicians, and engineers everywhere. On March 14th, we celebrate the number pi, often shortened to 3.14. And if you hadn't had a chance yet, if you're on the floor, please take part in the pies in the retiring room. They are from local Woodbury bakeries, Keys Cafe and Dorothy Ann Bakery. And to celebrate, I have something to share with you. There once was a number called pi. It never repeats and is infinite. Oh my. Measuring circles and arcs, your curiosity is sparked. So come join me for Woodbury pies. Happy Pi Day.
Representative Long.
Madam Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m. Monday, March 18th, 2024.
Representative Long moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m. on Monday, March 18th, 2024. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The motion prevails. Representative Long.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Long moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until 3:30 p.m. Monday, March 18th, 2024.